Is this your favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
It is. It is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and I know that in a world where The Prestige, Inception, The Dark Knight, all of those things.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
All right,
Yeah.
so we are continuing with our filmography of the great Christopher Nolan.
The GOAT.
In Nolan, we trust.
Oh yeah.
And we last left off on The Dark Knight Rises.
Yep.
So the next movie up was released on November the 5th of 2014.
Oh yeah.
Today we are talking about Interstellar.
Man,
hmm
this is one of those films, and we've talked about this, where I walked away going, that was a cinematic experience, right? There's sometimes you walk out of a movie and you go, that was a great movie. Have a lot of conversations. Some movies don't hit. This was an experience, and I am extremely happy and grateful that I saw this in the theater. I can't imagine not being able to witness this for the first time theatrically, because my goodness.
Nolan has gone on record saying that Stanley Kubrick is like his biggest inspiration.
Okay.
And a lot of people talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey,
hmm
based upon just it's a space movie. There's a really big score, and um, I made sure to try to watch that before I saw Interstellar, and it had no bearing on how I felt about Interstellar when I went to see it
Yeah.
because it's just such an epic experience. It's so loud. There's so much emotion.
Very loud. Very loud. We'll
Yeah,
talk about some of those loud scenes when
yeah,
we get there.
yeah. Very emotional, but memorable nonetheless. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's get started here.
Yeah.
All right, so we have our opening scene here, and we're introduced to Cooper
Yep.
and his children, Murph, short for Murphy, and Tom. And they're finding a drone. It's an interesting situation. They're just chasing down this drone. We don't know why. We're
Yeah.
seeing the world that everybody's in with all the dust everywhere. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it like they literally get in the truck and they're chasing the drone. We don't know why. And
Right.
I'm like, oh, this is okay. And and we're gonna get there. But I was very like, oh, they hijacked the drone. I was like, oh, we can do okay. All right.
Yeah. And I need to add here, there was a lot of mystery surrounding this movie because we had no idea what it was about.
Yeah.
And so Nolan, with his timeline thing, we open up with all these elderly people talking about the world and how the world got to where it was.
hmm
And we still have no idea what's going on. So when we shift to Cooper's family, we're still like in that mystery situation here of
Yeah,
not knowing what's
I en
going on.
I enjoyed it very much, and I told you before, like, Nolan can make a movie, I don't need to know much about it, I can just go and watch it, and I remember the trailers and seeing the cast, and that was mainly the highlight. I was like, "Okay, great cast, we're definitely going into space," but other than that, I had no idea what to expect, and it's refreshing. So, watching this movie for the first time, you kinda get like, "Oh, yeah, I don't really know what the story is," and that's exciting.
So we get to learn a little bit about Cooper's family. We go to the school, and the principal wants to talk to him about his kids. And found out that Tom has a score that's too low,
Mhm.
and he's still in high school, but they're already
Yeah,
making a decision that he can't go to college because the world needs farmers,
yeah.
and he's going to be a farmer. And Cooper, we're learning a little bit about him here and there. You know, he's a former engineer. He used to
Mhm.
work for NASA, so pretty intelligent guy. But he had to convert to becoming a farmer due to the way the world is, and
Yeah.
where NASA got shut down due to this situation that we're finding out about.
Yeah, we're getting hit with some pretty heavy exposition because this is where we
Yeah.
learn about him being a widower, that she's
Yes.
no longer around, the idea of NASA being shutting down, the idea that because usually when you have a guidance counselor or principal or whatnot, usually the goal is to get that student to college. And in this one, they're immediately shutting him out. I think at only 15 years old, they're like, "Yeah, we need him as a farmer." Like, that's what we need. We need farmers. So right away, I'm like, okay, so there's something going on with the food supply where they're like, no, we absolutely need farmers. We need him to be a farmer. That's what we need right now. We're not worried about kids' education. We're worried about farming. And I was like, oh, okay, this is so we're getting a little bit here and there and go, okay.
Right. Murph, she ends up getting in a fist fight with somebody because she's still using the old textbook that
Mm-hmm.
talks about the moon landing and Apollo. And you know, the people that are talking to Tom here, or excuse me, Cooper, well, it was faked. The belief is that everything was faked. And Cooper's just looking at them like, you're not serious, are you? You
It's
know?
it's such a bizarre situation because they're
Yeah,
trying to downplay it so much because they want to get the kids away from that level of thinking because they're like
right.
NASA doesn't exist. We don't need them wasting their time thinking about this stuff. And it's a good conversation because again, we get to learn more about Cooper in this scene because when she says, "Hey, like they shouldn't be worrying about that nonsense or this and that," he takes offense to it because of all the great things that have been done with that technology through NASA and without the technology that she's like putting down so much. Um, something like an MRI, and he brought up the MRI. If they would have
Yeah,
had the technology, they would have been able to use the MRI that would have been able to find the cyst that was growing inside his wife. And they weren't able to find it because that technology wasn't there. And he was proving a point and being like, no, that technology is important. We don't have access to it anymore, but that's no reason to deny how important and vital it was to our way of living. But they're so past that they're like, no, like we don't have it. We shouldn't be filling our heads with it, and our kids shouldn't be
right.
thinking about it. And I like Murph. I mean, I'm not condoning her going around hitting people, but it does show that she has that same passion for it that her father has.
It's a very eerie situation here because the world is turning on science,
Hmm.
and only because they're in a dire situation. So to push people towards the way of thinking they want to, they're turning their back on science, and it's
Yeah.
it's a pretty eerie situation here. Um, I'm glad you mentioned his wife. Obviously, that hit him as far as that goes. So the world is turning on. Not only is the world turning on NASA, but it's turning on science altogether.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, we need to eat. That's the main
Yeah.
thing. We need to eat.
Yeah.
So
They're so focused on self-preservation in this
right,
moment that they're like, we don't have the time to even think about science and invention and NASA. They're like, no, can you farm?
right,
Okay, go farm. And
right.
that's it.
And I'm glad you talked about the self-preservation because that's going to be a theme that we come back to
Hmm.
later on. Alrighty, so we're going to continue along with our plot here. And for those of you that don't know, I use Wikipedia. So if what I'm saying sounds familiar, that's where I get it from. Shout out to Wikipedia. So the year's 2067, and as we've stated, it's a global famine because um, it's like this fungus that's
Hmm.
traveling through all the plants. Like apparently the crops will grow normally, but eventually it'll get hit by this disease, this fungus that
Yeah.
destroys it, and they can't sustain it for long. I think they go through separate vegetables and such. Like right now, they're in a corn phase because corn
Yep,
is the
it's
only thing
just corn.
working.
It's
Yeah,
corn, corn, corn everywhere. And
right.
Nolan said, "I'm going to grow a lot of corn," and
Yeah,
did it. And he did it. He was like, "Yeah,
there is a gravitational anomaly going on in
mhm,
Murph's bedroom,
yes,
and we keep coming back to Murph's theory that she thinks it's a ghost.
yep,
Um, because she's seen like a Morse code with the books. But it wasn't until she accidentally left her window open that all the dust came in during a dust
mhm,
storm. And he sees the way the dust is falling, and there's a pattern, and apparently it gave him GPS coordinates
yeah,
to a secret facility, which is NASA, which is now
NASA,
that has become a black ops program,
yes."
apparently.
It's such an underground because it's in the middle of nowhere. You can't
Yeah,
stumble on this accidentally, even though he uses that as his excuse. And to go back, I do love when she brought up the idea of a ghost. Cooper does what Cooper does. He goes, all right, well, there's a science to it. Let's bring
Yeah.
science into this. Let's experiment. Let's come up with a hypothesis and do that. And then when he sees the coordinates, now all of a sudden it contains information. And I've always loved that about science, is that it's very easy to throw away an idea if you just don't understand. But if you could find information within it, there's something there. And that's when he's like, okay, wait a minute, there's something here. Let's go look. And like you said, they go find this very underground hidden unit of NASA. It feels almost like an illegal underground ring. Like we don't like, rule number one about NASA is we don't talk about NASA. That's what it felt like, you know. And you can tell that Cooper had no idea, because he's like, what is this? Are we gonna be able to leave? And our boy's there, you know, Michael Caine. And he's like, we're NASA.
Yeah, yeah, everyone's, like, laughing, they're like, "Oh, they think we're gonna kill them."
Yeah,
Like
like he really, like he was like, listen, and it's a funny moment.
Yeah,
Again, Nolan does a really good job with humor, and he goes, "I'm not telling you guys anything unless," and he puts his hands over Murph's ears, like, "We're gonna get out of here and not
right.
in a ditch somewhere," and it's really funny, and they laugh it off. They're just like, Do you not know who we are? We're NASA," and it's
Right.
like, "Oh wow,
They revealed that the government wanted NASA to drop bombs
yeah,
on countries, and they didn't say which ones particular, but
hmm
basically just to, you know, the population, to control the population, and
yep,
when NASA, um, went against that, that's when they shut them down, so that's when we
yep."
found out. So, um, I would like to think that if we ever went through something like that, that wouldn't be the that wouldn't be the
I
go-to
hope
response.
not. I hope
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
Be like, "Oh man, we're in a dire situation. We're running out of food." Tell you what, we're gonna bomb some places, all right? Be like,
Right.
"Oh God, can we please not do that?"
Yeah.
And again, it's always scary when those type of things happen in movies and sci-fi movies and stuff and whatnot, because you always wonder in the back of your head of like, do these conversations actually happen?
Right.
Like, I'm not saying they're gonna, but do those conversations ever actually occur? And it's frightening.
Yeah. Well, we see them in the zombie apocalypse movies that we see all the time. They want to drop
hmm
a bomb on an infestation, and it's like, well,
Yep.
there's still people that haven't turned there. It's like we don't
Can't
care.
risk it. Can't
We
risk it. They're like, we got to stop the spread.
right, right. So we have Brand that's played by Michael Caine,
hmm
and he's explained to Coop, as they call him, Coop Cooper. They're trying to find a planet that's capable of supporting life, and he's working on a gravity equation to transport a large number of people there.
hmm
And so Cooper is going to pilot a spacecraft because he was the best he'd ever seen,
Yeah.
and the Endurance. And the Endurance is going to be made up of a crew of three scientists. We have Romilly, we have Doyle, and then we have Brand's daughter, Amelia, uh, Anne Hathaway.
Oh yeah.
So this is the last chance that they're telling us, and they can't do it again. It's like a one and done. You have to get it right. They find out that a wormhole has been found near Saturn, and in the wormhole, like a ship can pass through it to find another galaxy for a new home.
hmm
And on the other side, they're going to investigate three different planets um, that are orbiting the black hole.
Yeah.
Uh, and Apparently, they've been checked previously by other NASA scientists. So that's our mission.
Yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
go three different planets. We need to find out the one capable of sustaining life so we can basically get everyone off. So apparently, the plan is to get everybody off of the planet. We're giving up on
Yeah.
Earth.
There's a plan A, and then
Right,
there's a plan B. And plan A is very important. And plan A is obviously they're gonna come up with transmitting quantum data back to Earth in order to develop a gravitational propulsion that will allow them to be able to take people off of Earth
right,
to another planet. But the plan B is like, if that doesn't work,
right.
they're going to just start a colony
Hmm.
with oh God, what's the term? I'm losing. They have
Embryos?
embryos. Thank you. I
Yeah,
was losing the word. They
I
have
don't know.
embryos, and they're going to start a colony on another planet. And Cooper brings up a good question. He goes, "Well, what about the people here? You would just leave them?" And Michael Caine is like, "Well, that's why Plan A is so important,
Right,
and that's why we have to make sure it happens." So they like you said, they have one shot to make this work. because Cooper is if Cooper goes, he leaves his family. Everyone else leaves their families. They got one shot to make this work, and if it doesn't work, they have to go with Plan B. So we're doing everything in our power to avoid Plan B whatsoever.
So they get to the first planet, and it's an entire planet filled with water,
Bro.
and it's but it's shallow,
Yeah.
right?
It's that planet, as someone who is deathly afraid of the ocean,
Yeah,
that planet scared me. And because it's just consumed by massive amounts of water. And even though there's not a lot of depth in certain areas, I was just terrified.
right,
And unfortunately for them, just going to that planet, they were working very much against time itself.
right. So, and we're going to get to that in a second here with the time situation because that's a mind trip as well.
Yeah.
Um, so Romilly's going to stay on the ship,
Hmm.
and we have Cooper, um, Brand, and Doyle. They're going to go down there, and they have to be very quick because
Yes.
I think it's 7 years for every hour they're on the planet.
Yes. Yes.
That is wild.
Because of the gravitational force is so strong on that planet, and dealing with the black hole situation, it's like for every hour down there, it's 7 years. And I just hearing that, I mean, we've all heard about relativity, and some of us have studied it more than others, and just how relativity in time and space feels in collaboration with however we're dealing with things in life. So when they said as a guys, you got to get in and you got to get out, and they're having that very, very scary conversation of like, are they willing to go down there and do that knowing they're going to lose years? And obviously the conversation comes up that Cooper is thinking, is he thinking about saving all of humanity or just his family? Because he's like, well, if we go and we make a mistake and we're there too long, there might not be people back home to save at all. It's a
Right,
very, very, very frightening situation, and I don't even know what I would do if I were present in that type of a conversation where we have to decide, like, are we going to do this? And if we do this, we have to be in and out. Like, they couldn't even risk an hour. Like, you're talking about
right,
going on there, they didn't wanna risk an hour, they probably want to get in and out in minutes, you know what I mean?
right.
The idea of an hour losing 7 years is horrifying, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I think Romilly on the endurance, he was prepared for at least a few years. If they
Yep,
do like a half hour, 3 years, something like that,
yep,
you
yep.
know,
He was ready,
um,
he's like, "I'll work on the data, I'll work on doing
right,
this," and I'm like, "Yo, that's commitment, my boy, because you 'cause you're gonna be up there all by yourself."
right. So they get to the surface, and the explorer is found dead.
Yes.
And then we see this tsunami coming towards them. That was scary. And
Bruh.
Doyle ends up getting swept by the tidal wave because
Mhm.
Amelia, she's trying to get the data from
Yes.
the wreckage, and her mistake ends up causing Doyle to get swept away as he's helping her back on the ship that touched down.
Yeah.
And they have to sit there and wait for everything to dry out so they can fly back up again.
Yeah.
Um, so already we have disaster on the
Yeah.
first planet because um, we end up finding out that they stayed a lot longer than they should have because of
A
this
lot
situation.
longer. Like, it's so wild because when they first get there and you see the horizon, they think they're mountains. They're like, "Oh, those are mountains." And then they start to realize, "No, those are waves," and they gotta get out there as soon as possible. And unfortunately, it does ending up costing them the lives of, one of their crew members. And when they get there, they have to wait, and I think, oh my god, how many, I couldn't even tell you. It's a long time. They
Well,
lose a lot of years.
yeah. So they were there for a little over 3 hours, and it
Oh
ended up
god.
ended up being 23 years.
23 years they
23
lost.
years because of how
And
right,
and and they were trying to figure out, like, why did we come here if this person's been dead? And they had to battle that relativity again. It goes based on the time difference. The person that crashed there or landed there has probably just only died mere minutes or hours ago. So it
right,
hasn't been like they've been there for years and years. It's like based on relativity and time, they showed up just after that person died. And that again, it's a complete mind trip thinking about that. But the idea that they lost 20 plus years is horrifying.
Right. So we come back on the Endurance and we find out about the passage of time. That's the first thing he wants to know, how much
Yep.
time we were gone. As
And
he's
you
thinking
see
about
it. You can
right.
see it. You can
He's
see
thinking
he's aged.
right. Romilly and Romilly didn't give up.
Mm-mm.
He just continued working and um she said, "Why didn't you use the cryosleep? Because that's a mechanism that exists here." And he said, "I did. There were periods, but I didn't want to sleep my life away."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um and I thought his delivery was that's a lot of time to be alone and by
Yeah.
yourself. And he was just pretty calm and collective. I thought that the actor did a good job with his choice. Because me,
Yeah.
I would that would not be good mental health
Yeah.
wise for
Yeah.
somebody, but he chose to just be calm and collective. Like, this is what I signed up for,
Yeah.
and so um so the first thing they're trying to do is reach everybody that's back on the planet. Cooper's family has been sending him messages,
Yeah.
but now there's a 23-year gap where they're continuing to send them. And at this point, he should have been back home by now. I think the original stretch was like 7 years, something like that.
Hmm.
That he should have been away for, something like that. Um, so we get the scene of Coop sitting down to watch the screen here, and we'll get to that in a second here. But actually, no, we can touch on that. Um, he sits down, and now we've already seen Tom talk to him, younger Tom, and now
Hmm.
we see older Tom.
Yeah.
And he's going through all the stages of just to update you, Dad. I got married, I had a kid. Sorry, Murph is still upset with you because we already had that scene where you know he drove away and she was upset. She was upset that he was leaving,
Hmm.
and very emotional scene as you recall always.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
very emotional scene. So she's still angry with him year after year after year. She's still angry with him, and as the screen goes black on Tom, screen comes up again, and we see Murph.
Yep.
Plus 23 years. She's a woman now. No longer a
Yep.
little girl. And Jessica Chastain, man, this scene,
Yeah.
right, gut punch, just a gut punch.
Bro.
She delivers this monologue. You know, hey Dad, you sob. You said you'd be back by now, and you said when you came back you'd be my age. Well, guess what? We're around the same age right now, and you're still not back. So it'd be really nice if you could come back right now. And Matthew McConaughey's just
Gone. Gone.
bawling,
Just
sobbing,
gone.
crying, and a lot of us that saw this, we were crying too
Bro,
the
there
first time.
wasn't
Yeah.
there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I
Woo.
was I was sobbing the first time I saw it. I've seen this movie numerous times, and every time I watch the scene, this is where the movie really hits you in the gut as hard as it possibly can, because it's the realization that he's missed so much time with his kids, and to him it feels merely a few hours. But to his family, we're talking 20 plus years. And him seeing the stages of his son grow up, and his son getting married, and his son having a baby named Jesse, and then Murph be missing. And she finally shows up. She goes, "Hey, it's my birthday," and you see him just sobbing. And it's a brilliant performance from Matthew McConaughey, but it is gut wrenching. And then eventually it just cuts to black and there's nothing left. And that just it sent me over the moon, man, with tears. I was done.
Right. And we haven't mentioned him yet, but Donald, it's his father-in-law
Mhm.
that's decided to stay with the family, um, even after his daughter passed away. And he
Yeah,
got the message through Tom. Oh, by the way, Grandpa died.
yeah,
We buried him with Mom.
yep,
So just a lot of news, but Murph at the very end, just such a memorable scene.
yeah,
We shift over to Murph on Earth here. We found out she's become a scientist,
mhm,
and she's working with Brand on Earth. And apparently, Brand, on his deathbed, confesses that he lied about being close to a solution for the gravity equation.
oh, man.
He and we don't find out when he found out. He just said he lied.
Mhm,
He said the main thing was he was hoping that the endurance team would be able to find the planet, and so they could send the embryos
yeah,
because they're just giving up. They're
yeah.
we're ready to start all over again.
In his mind, there was never any real chance at saving the people on Earth.
Right.
And I remember seeing this and I got so angry
Yeah.
because it showed that he lied. He lied to his crew. He lied to certain crew members. He lied to his crew and made them believe that it was possible to save the humans on Earth, and it just wasn't. He could not. He couldn't. It just wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't possible in his eyes.
Right.
So the idea that Plan A was so important is now out the window. It was always Plan B, and this is a very, very, very sad scene for Murph because now she has to question him. Did my father know? Did my father know that he was essentially leaving us to die? And this was killing me because I couldn't imagine having a daughter think that of you as a father, that yeah, you left. So like she's trying to find out this information right now. And I remember like I'm sad and I'm also very, very, very angry at what had just taken place.
So now they have a decision to make of what's the next planet, because they used up a lot of the resources because of those 23 years with the
Hmm.
endurance. So they're deciding from two different planets, either to go to the planet that um, Dr. Mann was on, the
Hmm.
scientist, or um, the other planet where Wolf was on. And Cooper finds out that Wolf and Amelia have a relationship.
Yep.
So he doesn't want to trust her word of going to Wolf's planet. And she said that she's been going based upon the data, that she
Yeah.
believes that's the planet that we should go to. And he's telling Romilly, we can't trust her. She loves him.
Yeah.
And that's gonna flood her
Yep.
decisions here. And we get this nice little part here where we talk about love and love being necessary, and it's just such a beautiful exchange, with
Yeah. It's really good.
just yes, I'm excited if I get to see him, if he's still alive, but I am a scientist too, and I'm doing it based upon the data. you know this is what we're doing, and he's like, yeah, but you could be wrong though, because
Yeah,
of
like
that.
it's a good conversation because again, Cooper is in a very similar spot where they brought up the fact that some of the decisions you may be making only thinking about your family, not necessarily
Right.
the world. And Cooper's response was like, I'm thinking about everyone's families. And now he's in a situation where now he's questioning her and her decisions based off of love. And it's like, oh, well, you love this person. So how do we know that you're following the data the way that it should be followed?
Right.
Because now you're letting impulse take over. And she's doing her best as a scientist to say no, as much as it hurts me, regardless of what the data says, I'm going to follow the data. She's like, the science has to come first. It's a really, really good scene between those two.
So they decide to go to Man's planet, and it's cold.
Yeah.
And they wake Man up, and it's a surprise appearance from Matt Damon. Apparently,
I
we didn't know he was gonna be in the movie until that moment.
I loved it. And uncredited, like just unannounced Matt Damon. I remember going, "Oh wow, that's Matt Damon." And I was extremely excited.
Right. So they wake him up from the cryo sleep. Um, he he says that there actually are places on the planet
Mhm.
where people can inhabit.
Yes.
What we can have the people come over here. There is a situation here. So when everybody gets down there, he waits till he has Cooper alone, and then he reveals, because Amelia's off doing something else,
Mhm.
and Romilly's back on the ship. He reveals that he lies about the planet's um, being able to, you know, move there, because he was hoping somebody would rescue him. He lied
Yeah. Yep.
because, so he went back to cryo sleep thinking that, you know, I might end up dying, you
Yeah.
know? And once they do rescue him, he still wants to move forward with this plan B from Brand, no
Yep.
matter what, even though he just got saved from his own lies. He lied to get people to come get him, but he's still going to move forward with plan B, even though his own life was saved. Um,
Yep.
so Romilly dies in an explosion when he attempts to access the logs here, because of, I guess Man typed in a situation there that it would do that. you know?
Yeah, it seems to me he was setting up a self-destruction
Right.
situation so, like, if no one was gonna come, he was gonna die, but, at the very last second when he was able to get a signal out, he's like, "Nope," and he tore it apart. He's like, "Oh, never mind, I don't need that
Right.
anymore," and he lied about it, and now, like, we're kinda getting this crazy heel turn from Matt Damon's character
Right.
because, we're like, "Oh my god, like, this poor guy," and then he finds out that Cooper's planning to leave. Like, they're like,
Right.
"What do we do?" And Cooper's like, "I'm going home. If the plan was not to bring everyone from Earth and do what we need to do, I'm going home to be with my kids. I'm gonna go home with my family." And Matt Damon's character is like, "We can't allow that because now we need a lot of those resources." So, like, he kind of just puts it out there. He goes, "Yeah," he tells him the truth and it's like, "Here's what's gonna happen. I need those resources. I can't let you take them." And yeah, we got to continue with the mission. It's always about the mission. And there's a long conversation about doing what's right even though you morally feel it's wrong, like you want to save those people, and that's commendable, Cooper, but the reality is the decision was made already and we have to follow through with the mission. It becomes very much about the mission, even though this guy just lied in every aspect in order for them to come save him. He's now giving a lecture to Cooper about, like, hey, you can't really save those people, we have to move forward with the mission. And I was like, how dare you? And I
Right.
and I think Matt, I think Cooper even calls him a coward for it. I
Yeah.
think he goes like, yeah, I think he calls him a coward for it.
So the assumption is they want to go to the third planet because for sure we know the third planet's good now at this point.
Yes.
That's what they're assuming anyway.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so he tries to kill Cooper and hijack the Endurance. Um, he ends up blowing himself up.
Oh my God. This sequence.
you know, when he doesn't dock properly with the Endurance. Um, so Cooper regains control um, of the ship. He initiates a way for like a slingshot type situation to propel.
It visually looks incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. And I just have to say this. The character death for Matt Damon was so loud.
Yeah.
It's the only time, and I know Nolan did it by design. It's the only time I've ever been in a theater and jumped that far out of my own body. Like, it was so loud and scary because Cooper is begging him, do not do what you're attempting to do. Do not. It's not docking correctly. Do not do that. And he's so bent on this mission, and mid-sentence cuts mid-sentence like the finale of Sopranos. It's mid-sentence and you get the loudest pressure explosion that you could possibly have in a theater. And I remember jumping and like doing the whole like clutch my pearls, like I put my hand on my chest, and I was just like, "Oh my god," you know what I mean? And it was insanely loud. But then, like you said, Cooper gets to do this incredible docking sequence, which I absolutely loved because Nolan's doing a lot of practical effects for it, and it's just it's so good.
So the purpose of the slingshot maneuver is so they could propel themselves toward the black hole and to
Hmm.
get to that third planet
Yeah.
where Edmonds is because they don't have enough power to get back home apparently, you
Mm-mm.
know. So, but he doesn't say that he's going to sacrifice himself in a probe,
Nope. Doesn't say that.
because he doesn't tell her. He's like, I'm just going to fall into the black hole and whatever happens happens, but we're going to propel you towards the third planet.
Yep, and
And
he tricked her a little bit because he's like, "We're gonna send TARS, which is that AI machine. We're gonna send
yeah,
TARS." So you can't do that. And he said, "But we need the data, so we're gonna send him." And it kind of gives her reassurance. She's like, "Okay, well, if we have to do that, we have to do that." So then again, you have no idea that he's also planning to sacrifice himself in order for her to make it, and you're like, "Oh no."
right. And we've already had just really loud sequences up until then. Just that score just swelling. It swelled when he was driving away from the farmhouse and crying.
Hmm.
It swelled as the ship was taking off. It swelled um, as the water was coming on that first planet. It swelled so many times,
Oh yeah,
and it's about to swell again in this part here. So instead of the dying upon entering the black hole, Cooper ends up finding himself in a five-dimensional universe here.
bro.
just mind blowing. And it's not even in the plane of existence. It's hard to
No.
explain. You have to see it.
It's a fifth dimension. Like that in
Yeah,
itself is unreal. He loses communication with Tars and he ejects, which like blew my mind. And I was like, did he eject because of muscle memory? Because the machine is like eject, eject, and he does it. And I'm like, you just eject it into space. What? What? But then he ends up in this I man, I yeah, there's no way to explain. You have to actually visually see it. Like this fifth dimension. It's unreal to look at, but I was in the theater. My mind was melting at this point
yeah,
because I love science. I love the study of space, but seeing things put into film that I never imagined to see because Nolan does what Nolan does. Like at this point, I was just like jaw was just dropped, and I was just like, I don't like it was just so good.
yeah. Well, I think the probe was going to explode. So
Mhm.
rather than just
Yeah.
dying the probe, he just took his chances saying, "Hey, I'll see what happens
Yep.
if I go in the
And he
black
went
hole."
for it.
Yeah, so he went for it. So while he's in the fifth dimension here, he's starting to see moments of time in his
Mhm.
life. Because throughout the movie, they've been saying they sent us here, they
Yeah.
gave us this information, we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And so from inside the fifth dimension, he's seen moments of time in Murph's bedroom,
Yeah.
and he sees her looking for clues to the gravity equation. Um, Grown Murph, obviously,
Mhm.
and he starts to try to contact her by hitting the bookshelf,
Yeah.
and by doing so using Morse code. Um, he ends up he ends up doing it through the watch, and
Yeah. It's so cool.
you end up finding out he was the ghost.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful excuse me, revelation at that moment when she
Yeah,
starts to put two and two together. And you have this moment where grown Murph is in there and she's kind of thinking and analyzing at the same time where he's in this fourth dimension trying to figure everything out and he's visually seeing different aspects of time through just her bedroom and you start to realize like you said that all those many years ago he was her ghost because again time is not linear. That's one thing that the movie says at the point of the
right.
time is not a linear aspect, so it's not a chain of events that goes right after the other. Time is all unit. We're getting like Dr. Manhattan in here, man. Like we're
Yeah,
getting deep with, you know what I mean? Like time is all happening now.
right.
So when she figures that out, it's a really sweet beautiful moment and then he does the tapping of the space and time in order to manipulate the watch into reading Morse code to give her the answer and the information that she would need to actually solve that equation in order to get people off the planet. It's great.
It's revealed that he was the one that knocked the books down to do the Morse
Hmm.
code to say stay, and then he manipulated the gravity with the dust to give
Hmm.
them the coordinates for the GPS to go
Yep.
to NASA. And obviously, he's screaming at his past self, saying, "Don't go, you idiot! Don't go!"
Yeah.
He was the one. But then finally, he just gives up and says, "You know what? Adult Murph is here. I can give her the
Hmm.
equation," and she figures it out that he was her ghost. Um, Apparently, this construct it was made by future humans
Yes,
because
our descendants, bro. Like
they
what?
learned how to do time travel, and they somehow found it through this black hole. So another mind-blowing thing is it wasn't aliens, it was us, but from the
No,
future. Yeah,
the whole movie they keep referring to they, and I was like, are we
they
gonna get aliens? Like,
yeah,
what are we gonna get here? And when he's having a conversation with Tars, and because Tars is still somewhere in the fourth dimension as well, and in Tars he's even sure he's like who, and Cooper's like they are us, like they're us, they're our descendants. They found a way to get into the fifth dimension, and they've created a fourth dimension, which is time, and they're allowing us to do so. And this is where the movie like really hit me because Tars is like, why? And Cooper says that one word. He goes, it's love.
yeah,
He goes, love is quantifiable. And they were looking for a love so strong and so strong that they could use it in order to create this bond between two people that they can use to send this message. These descendants were trying to save these people and save humanity. it's almost like it's the loop, right? Like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, how can they attempt to save people in the past? That means they would have already had to save them in the past for them
Right.
to exist in the future. Like we're getting a lot of Terminator 2, John Connor and Kyle Reese thing going on right here. And I love that stuff about time travel. But that scene is where it hit me the most because he talks about, love being quantifiable, which is what Anne Hathaway's character also brought up earlier. It's like love is quantifiable. Like we just have to figure it out. And I love that because it's that father-daughter love that him and Murph shared that they were able to use in order for him to get that message across time itself by using gravity. And again, I'm sitting there and my mind is
Yeah.
just exploding.
So apparently, the future humans, they
Hmm.
save him from this dimension because
Yeah.
he passed through time to the point of finding them, where
Hmm.
they're able to control time. And he wakes up in the station here, and it's so far in the future that he is reunited with his daughter, who is now elderly,
Yeah.
and she ended up
Hmm.
using the gravity equation that he sent her to help everybody leave Earth.
Hmm.
And it's a sad scene. He has to say goodbye to his daughter, who's now
Yeah.
elderly. He's holding her hand. I said I would come back, and I'm back now.
Hmm.
And it's such a it's almost eerie because all of his descendants are there too. These are
Yes.
these are his children's children, his great nephews and nieces, and their
Hmm.
spouses and such. They don't know who he is, you
Nope.
know, and
Nothing
we
at
don't
all.
and we don't acknowledge it. I'm sure she talked
Mm-mm.
about him, but we don't
Yeah.
acknowledge it. It's very eerie in the sense that they just all shuffle out the room when they
It's
saw him.
it
I
is
mean,
it is I
maybe they do know who he is, but they're like, no, she needed her moment with him, so they all leave.
Yes.
You know?
It's almost as if, like, when she says, "You were my ghost," when that final scene hits, it is almost like he's a ghost. He's a remnant. He's a memory. They don't know him. They only know him maybe through maybe some conversations she might have had, but she lived her own life. She worked on the science and she had her own family, and I don't think she constantly talked about her father Cooper. She's creating new memories. So to them, he is a stranger. And they know who he is, obviously, because she took this last trip to make sure that she could see him and say goodbye. And I do love that moment where there's not a word shared between the descendants and him. They kind of just give them their time together.
Right.
And it's so sad. He lost all those years, but because of what he was able to do, he was able to save her, and she was able to save the world. And it's a beautiful thing. And she says something that hurt me so much, where she said, no parent should watch their kid die. And she goes, I have my family, I'm here with mine. Like, you have to get out there. And he's like, go where? And like that whole conversation just emotionally wrecked me. But it's a beautiful moment, it's a tender moment, it's extremely heartbreaking, but that I'm forever grateful that even though it's a film, that the character was aware that he didn't leave her. He didn't leave her with intention of never coming back, because again, that was a belief that she had, where she was like, Dad left. He left us to die. Like that's why. Like, and for those years and up to that moment, she knows the truth that wasn't the case.
So she puts it out there that he needs to go look for Amelia because
Hmm.
she's still out there. And um, well, they had a nice moment before this where they named the place Cooper Station, and
Hmm.
they recreated the house that he was in and everything because that's where she made the discovery. Hey, are you named after me? No, we named it after your daughter because she's the one that
Yeah.
came up
Yeah.
with everything.
Yep. He's like, oh, she's just so nice. She named it after me. And he goes, well, actually,
Yeah, it was your daughter,
it's
right?
named after your daughter. And he's like, oh, okay.
So the only thing he has left to live for, like he could stay and try to get to know all of his descendants or go back out there because now
Yeah.
Amelia's out there and he decides, you know what? She doesn't deserve to be out there by herself because this is partially because of her.
Yeah.
So he sets off to go to find her. We see Amelia arriving on Wolf Edmund's planet. Um,
Hmm.
he is not there, unfortunately, because he didn't make it. But she removes her helmet and starts breathing because it looks like that's a planet that was
Yep.
sustainable. And we get the score swelling again,
Yep.
and we just see, we see that's it. Coop is off to find her, and we're left with the hope that he hopefully finds her one day. And
Yeah, it's you know how Nolan likes his endings. Like
Yeah,
some
it's
are very
open.
ambiguous. It's open, and you know he's gonna go search for her, and you hope that he finds her, and from there they can start the colonization of that planet and whatnot and go from there. But she's all alone, so hopefully I'd like to be a little optimistic and hope that he finds her. And then again, it's kind of sad because he's kind of starting his life over again to a
Yeah.
degree. Like he's creating a new family and whatnot. So it's a heartbreaking ending.
So the movie, when I first saw this movie and my mind was blown, like a lot of us,
Oh yeah.
um, I picked up on a few themes here. There was a lot of science because
Hmm.
Murph talked about the ghost. Well, ghosts don't exist, but let's look at it from a scientific aspect.
Hmm.
And then there was a lot of talk about love.
Hmm.
The love of his family would bring him back home one day. Emilia's love is drawing her to Edmund's planet, but there's also
Hmm.
science involved there. So there was a lot of practical things and a lot of human emotions as well.
Yes.
And there was a nice balance of that. I really enjoyed that because a lot of times when we go to see a science fiction movie, and this was a science fiction movie,
Oh yeah.
there's there's a struggle to find a balance.
Yeah.
Either it's too emotional and not scientific enough, or it's too scientific and not emotional enough. And I think Nolan was trying to give us a balance between the two because of the score and because of the emotions involved. It's more like a drama to me when I see it.
It
It's
is.
still it's still it's a science fiction epic. I will say
Yeah.
that. It's pretty long. It's almost 3 hours long.
Hmm.
So it's very epic, but there's so much emotions involved in this movie, and the score is just so emotional, and there's so many emotions involved. I feel like it's a drama when you
Yeah. There's something to be said, like you said, about the balance of the movie between things that you would never think to put a scientific label on, like love, right? Like it made me think of Matrix Revolutions, the second movie where he's talking to a program and he's like, "You know what love is?" He goes, "Well, love is just a word. There's something behind that word." And it made me think of that because again, I'm like, "Oh, well, can love be scientific? Can you have that conversation of a bond between two people and put that into a science movie and have it correlate and balance?" And I thought Nolan did a great job at it because, again, a lot of this movie relies on science, the understanding of science, the utilization of science in order to figure things out, but then also not shying away from how important love is between two people and how it drives us, how it can drive us in science. The reality is a lot of science occurs because of love. We work on ways to cure people because of love. We work on ways to travel because of love. And I think that aspect of having that in this movie was great. And again, when you sit there and look at it, it's a science fiction movie, but there's a lot of dramatic elements to it that I think where there are some people that may not be into science fiction movies, but I feel like they could watch this movie and there's enough drama in it and human connection that they could get through it and go, no, that was a good movie. And I also think that if someone was like, oh, I don't really want to see a big dramatic piece, there's enough science in this to get them through it because, again, there's a very good balance there. It's like they combined really well. So he did a good job with that. And like you said, with the score, dude, like every time that thing swelled up, it was an emotional gut punch. So the movie kept reminding you that we're dealing with human characters because just having a movie where you're talking about we have to save everyone on the planet, right? That's it. We just got to save the planet. And he's like, okay, let's just save the planet. But instead, it's like, okay, we're gonna save the planet, but this story is gonna focus on this family. And I think that's what made that movie work so well for me and many other people, is that now we're not thinking about billions of people. We're dealing with this very specific family and their interactions with one another and the pain that they're enduring and the tragedy of it all. And it's just like you combine that with strong science fiction and a mind like Nolan, you get something really good, man. This is one of my favorites, man. I've said it's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, that Hans Zimmer score, definitely. That
Dude,
it,
it's
it definitely makes the movie. I did notice Nolan was on this Tale of Two Cities kick because
mhm,
it's quoted in The Dark Knight Rises, and then it's quoted again here. Do not go into that gentle night. So
yeah,
a Charles Dickens piece, Tale of Two Cities, definitely a standout. Um, let's look at the budget in the box office. So
okay,
the budget's listed at 165 million.
okay,
So by the way, with what he was able to do with 165,
bro.
not bad, just visually, just amazing.
Unbelievable with how it looks. Again, we talked about it. There's a lot of practical effects in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and it looks fantastic.
And stop me if you heard this one before, but uh, he it was a success at the box office.
Oh, yeah.
Seven
Oh,
hundred
yeah.
seventy-three million.
Oh,
On a
yeah.
165 million budget. So
Mhm.
Nolan being money there. Um, uh, Also, I didn't touch on it before. Just another ongoing theme here. We have somebody with a spouse that is no longer with us.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, Nolan's got a thing for that, man. He's got a thing for those relationships that are either broken or someone is gone.
Yeah,
Like like that's just the reality of it. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of his thing for these movies.
yeah, absolutely. It's either strained relationships or a spouse that's passed
Yep,
away. Unfortunately,
that's it.
that's
That's
what he
it.
likes
He's like
doing there.
pain. He goes, we
Yeah,
got a relationship here. I want pain. I was like, okay, we got it.
right. So we've already looked at the box office and a few of the
Mhm.
themes here. Um, let's take a look at the Oscars, and it only won one. It was nominated for 6 Oscars. It won
Okay.
best visual effects, and rightfully so.
Yes, because they were magnificent.
Yeah. The other ones were best original score, best production design,
Mhm.
best sound mixing, best sound editing, and I already said best original score. So one, two, three,
Okay.
four, five Oscars total. Um, let's double check that here. Yeah, five. Well, best director nomination.
That's
No best picture nomination. Let's get the
that's so
best.
wild to me.
Let's look at the best pictures that were
Okay.
a part of that year. So Birdman won,
Yeah, I remember.
and the other nominations were American Sniper,
Okay.
Boyhood. By the way, Boyhood was filmed over the course of 10 years, and that's pretty
That
awesome.
that
That,
movie's wild.
yeah, that they did that. I think that got a Best Picture nomination based upon that fact alone.
Yeah, just for that alone, they got it.
Yeah, we have Grand Budapest Hotel, The
Yep.
Imitation Game,
Mhm.
Selma, The
Okay.
Theory of Everything, and Whiplash.
That's a good lineup, man.
It's a great lineup.
That's a good lineup.
Two, three, four, five, six, seven. There's eight movies. Um, I think Interstellar could have been nominated for Best Picture. That's just
I
me.
absolutely agree with you. I think it could have been nominated. I think Nolan definitely should have gotten Best Director nominated. And I would have definitely well, I'd have to think about the other categories as well and what other pictures were nominated. I can't remember off the top of my head, but sound design, production, all that, they were magnificent. Like there's so much to love about this movie that I was like insanely surprised that it just got one Oscar. But the fact that it didn't get nominated for Best Picture is wild to me because again, I've seen all those movies you mentioned for Best Picture, and I loved all of them. Whiplash was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Boyhood was revolutionary, shooting over the span of 10 years. Grand Budapest Hotel was one of my faves. Like there's a lot. They had a great lineup. But Interstellar, and again, maybe because I'm a huge sci-fi guy at heart and it's Christopher Nolan, maybe there's a bias there, but I think I can put my bias aside a little bit and say, no, that was an exceptionally well-made film. And I can't see, like, in my opinion, that's one of those snub situations. Like, that feels like a snub.
Yeah, let's take a look here. I have the best directors. So
Hmm.
Alejandro Inarritu,
Okay.
He won for
Yep.
Birdman. So that won
Hmm.
Best Picture too.
Yeah.
We have Richard Linklater for Boyhood, Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher, Wes Anderson for Grand Budapest Hotel, and then Morton Tildum for The Imitation Game. So
Okay.
those were the people that were nominated besides Nolan. But
Hmm.
at this point in time, still no Best Director nomination. And that's what ended up happening. And um, I thought that Interstellar would have at least won a few more technical awards, but
Yeah.
it wasn't the year for it, unfortunately. Just one. So
Again, like you can tell significantly, especially with production design, when you're watching a movie, our brains are designed to notice if anything is off or seems weird. So when we have visual effects and CGI and certain things, when they're clean, but every once in a while you can still get pulled out of a project. Nolan's attention to detail and the practical sets and designs and everything else were just out of this world, to the point where every time I was looking at something, I felt like I was visually really looking at something. Like the black hole visual effects, the space visual effects, the ship practical effects, the docking sequences, everything else just looked unbelievably good. It's going to hold up for a very, very, very long time, in every aspect of the word. He used miniatures. Like, come on, man. Like, having miniatures is a lost art in film, and being able to use them in something as significantly huge as Interstellar, I felt should have got appreciated more. Again, maybe I'm a little bitter years later. I don't know. I'm like, come on, man. Y'all could have given them a little bit more.
Right. So let's give a little love to the cast here. Of course, we have
Yes.
Matthew McConaughey as Joseph Cooper. We have Anne Hathaway as Amelia Brand. We have three people playing the role of Murph. We have
Hmm.
Mackenzie Foy as young Murph.
Hmm.
Um, we have Jessica Chastain as older Murph. And then we have Ellen Burstyn as elderly Murph.
Yes.
And we have John Lithgow as Donald, Coop's father-in-law. We have Michael Caine as John Brand, Amelia's father. We have David Gyasi as Romilly, Wes Bentley as Doyle. We have Casey Affleck as older Tom Cooper, and then
Yeah.
Timothy Chalamet as young Tom Cooper, early
Yeah.
appearance.
Early Timothy. Yeah.
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 We have that surprise appearance from Matt Damon as Man. We have Bill Irwin as Tars and Josh Stewart as Case, the androids. Well, not androids, but the robots.
Hmm.
And by the way, we live in a future where robots with artificial intelligence just exist.
They just exist. They're
Yep.
just there. And
I
their
love that.
introduction is just like, no, they're here. There you go.
Yeah, I like that too, where we're not going to complicate things too much. We have a lot of stuff to give you guys. Robots exist and they can think on their own. So there we go.
I loved it too because, again, I love it about Nolan where he knows that his audience is capable, right? He doesn't have to hold our hands. So I love that we're introduced to Tars, and right away, like the only thing that we hear from Cooper's character is like, "Yo, you're not a Marine anymore. You need to get out of this mindset." And it's, oh, okay. So we've had these for a while. They've been in our military, and I love that you can alter the settings of Tars, whether you want to be sarcastic or funny, and then they're willy nilly and they go and do their own thing. And I just thought it was great. Again, he didn't need to hold our hands. He was like, "No, we have them. There you go."
Right. We have Topher Grace as Getty, and that's Murphy's significant other.
Mhm.
Another surprise appearance. And then David Oyelowo as the principal.
Yes.
Um, so that's our cast here. Um, I think Matthew McConaughey is the standout in this movie.
I remember now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I think this was the movie that kickstarted his return in those major motion pictures where he was much more than just what people assumed Matthew McConaughey was. For years, everyone thought of Matthew McConaughey as obviously all right, all right, all right. And he
right,
was making movies like Sahara and rom-coms and doing his thing, but just doing his own thing. And I remember him getting cast for this. And again, we had that instance where it's like, wait a minute, if Nolan is picking you, he sees something that maybe we haven't seen. Again, I remember seeing jokes online. It's like, oh, Matthew McConaughey's going to space. He's gonna go all right, all right. Again, it's the same thing over and over again. And I felt like this was the movie that kind of kicked off that resurgence of Matthew McConaughey, because after this, he blew up. You're
yeah,
talking about Dallas Buyers Club. You're talking about Mud. You're talking about what's that police show that was on HBO? True Detective.
right.
Like Matthew McConaughey was just exploding. But I agree with you. Anne Hathaway is a knockout in every
Oh,
performance that she
she's
ever
great.
gives,
No, she's a
in
great actor.
everything.
Oh yeah,
Jessica Chastain, magnificent. Michael Caine. But in this particular movie, based off of the script, what the characters were given, Matthew McConaughey, dude, just absolutely the true star of this film. All the movie, he's got all the weight of it on his shoulders, and the performance he's giving, it's stellar, no pun intended.
right. Um, so in 2013, that's when Dallas Buyers Club came out,
Mhm.
and then Wolf of Wall Street came out as well, and then 2014 was Interstellar. So
Okay, okay.
I believe Nolan casted him before those were released. I think that's the situation.
Yes, I think so, 'cause I remember there being, 'cause there
Yeah.
if those movies had came out, I don't think people would have questioned his casting in Interstellar, 'cause I remember people being like, "Matthew McConaughey with Christopher Nolan?" But which is quite possible, quite possible.
Yeah, and then at this point, he had already won the Oscar for Best Actor in
Yep.
Dallas Buyers Club. So now it's, oh, what's he going to do as his follow-up to that year of Dallas Buyers Club and
Mhm.
Wolf of Wall Street, and then it was Interstellar, and then it was a situation where it's like, oh well, let's see what we can get with McConaughey now. Like it was the McConaissance at the time,
Yeah.
So but Nolan takes pride in the fact that he casted him before those movies were released, apparently,
Dude,
because
Nolan knows,
he saw
man.
something in McConaughey. We had Anne Hathaway returning. She had just worked with Nolan in Dark Knight Rises. He said, "Hey, why not? Let's bring her back again." And she does a good job there. Um, and at this point in time, she had already won the Oscar for
Yeah.
Les Mis. So, when you see the trailer, it's Academy Award winner Matthew McConaughey, Academy Award winner Anne Hathaway. Just it's
Yeah,
always a
it's
nice
so
thing.
good, it's so good.
Alrighty, so let's take a look here at some notable lines. And seeing as how that Ricardo is the father, I like putting him in these situations where he gets to play the dad. And Ricardo, I think you've gone on record saying this is one of your favorite movies, not just one of your favorite Nolan movies, but one of your favorite movies, period. And it's hard not to with Cooper playing a father and doing everything for his kids and such. So
If you could you send them to me again? I'm having a hard time locating them.
yeah, no problem.
So just send those bad boys over. And yeah, like there's so many really there's a lot of good dialogue in the film. There's a lot of great performances in here. There's a lot of sharp writing and whatnot. So when you were like, "Hey, you're gonna get Cooper," I was like, "Oh man!" And again, yeah,
Yeah,
there's just a lot like. And again, when I first saw this movie, and it's one of the most beautiful things I said about watching film as we age and we go through life changes. So watching this movie in 2014 was already an experience, and I already connected. And then watching it again as a father, it's like, oh man, like it just hits on another level. And that's what I love about movies. You know what I mean? It's the idea that they change. The more you watch them, the more your life changes. So there's something to be said about like how I view it now as a dad. It just hits differently.
yeah.
Okay, so we're good.
Alrighty. So this first scene here, it's Donald and Cooper on the
Okay.
porch here talking. I hear your meeting at the school didn't go so well.
You heard? It's like we've forgotten who we are, Donald. Explorers, pioneers, not caretakers.
When I was a kid, it felt like they made something new every day. Some gadget or idea. Like every day was Christmas. But 6 billion people, just try to imagine that. And every last one of them trying to have it all. This world isn't so bad. And Tom will do just fine. You're the one who doesn't belong. Born 40 years too late, or 40 years too early. My daughter knew it. God bless her. And your kids knew it, especially Murph.
Well, we used to look up at the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt.
Cooper, you were good at something, and you never got a chance to do anything with it. I'm sorry.
This is a good conversation because it also lends into the ending of the film when he's with Murph, because it's like, you shouldn't be here. You need to be out there. And
Right.
there's that conversation here that he's having with him. It's like, hey man, like 40 years too early or 40 years too late, you've got this amazing skill, but yet you're stuck here with us. And he's also trying to push him and like, hey man, you need to go do this. Like, this is who you are. That's what you're missing. And I do like that we revisit that at the end of the movie, and having it here kind of like as a foreshadow, like that emotional beat of like, hey man, like that's what you are. And even Cooper says it at the end of the movie. He just says something along the lines like, I don't like to sit here and try to think of where we were. I want to see where we're going. And I like that to revisit it a few times.
there's a nice commentary here about being able to pursue your dreams, and
Mhm.
it's not that subtle. This is what you're meant
No.
to do. Go and do what you're meant to do.
Mhm.
There's Cooper talking about Murph. She's meant to do something more. And
Yeah.
he's talking about his son. My son is he's 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 better than being a farmer. I should know. I'm his
Yeah.
dad,
Yeah.
and then we have Donald here talking about Cooper, you weren't meant to be here, but unfortunately you never got to use it. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
hear that. So all right, so we have this monologue here from Cooper. It's the emotional send off between him and Murph, and she's crying because she doesn't want to see her dad go. And he says this monologue here while he's talking to Murph.
Yeah. After you kids came along, your mother said something to me I never quite understood. She said, "Now we're just here to be memories for our kids." And I think that now I understand what she meant. Once you're a parent, you're the ghost of your children's future. I texted you
Yeah.
as I was rewatching this.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, when he said that line again, you view films differently. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I get what she's saying too. I'm like, she's not even a real person, but I get it. I get it. I get it. And it's just we're here just for the memories of our kids and the ghost of our children's future. And again, that term ghost, they use it throughout the film,
Right.
and it's intentional with the ghost, and like we don't know this yet, but he's the ghost, and I love that.
We didn't talk about it too much, but that's an emotional scene, man. Like
Very.
she
He's
is.
just holding her, and
Yeah.
she's just like, "You're not supposed to go," and she's showing in the book, "You got to stay." And he's telling her, he's like, "Look, this is what we're here for. This is what our parents are here for. We're here to do
Right.
things that, even though you may not want us to go, you may not want us to leave, we're doing it for you." And it's just like, it hits.
Is that when you start welling up for that scene?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when they're talking on the bed, like I'm fine. I'm good. Like she's upset, and I'm like, oh, okay, like it's sad. But when he starts talking to her, it's like, this is what your mom told me, and like this and that. And because I'm like, oh man, like I'm just sitting here and I get all like emotional watching it and everything else. But yeah, that's when it really hits.
Shout out to Mackenzie Foy. She really sells that scene.
Yeah, she's another good one, man.
Yeah. All right. So this is Jessica Chastain, older Murph, and
Hmm.
she's appearing on the screen. This is where Cooper's looking at the screen, and he's already welling up because he saw Tom say a bunch of things. But then when Murph comes on, he loses it. So I'm going to do this monologue here from older Murph. Hey, Dad, you SOB. I never made one of these when you were still responding because I was so mad at you for leaving. And then when you went quiet, it seemed like I should live with that decision. And I have. But today's my birthday, and it's a special one because you told me. You told me that when you came back, we might be the same age. And today I'm the age you were when you left. So it'd be a real good time for you to come back. I got choked up reading that.
Bro, the reason one of the reasons why it's so sad is obviously it's because she's been dark for so long.
Right,
And she, like she said, she's come to peace with the fact that she never talked to him and everything else because she was so angry. But it's almost like there was a small piece of hope still in her. It's like, well, he said, when he came back, we might be the same age. Because I'm there, like it's here. Be a good time for you to come back. And I was just like, it's just.
yeah,
And again, he's gone. He's got the hand on the mouth,
right.
and he's just sobbing uncontrollably. And there's nothing he can do, and it breaks my heart.
I'd be curious to know how that scene was filmed. Was he really
Yeah.
looking at the video of her, or was somebody just reading the lines
I
off
would
screen?
absolutely love
You
that. That would
know,
be yeah,
because the crying in this scene is
bro.
it's out of 10. It's out
He's
of
at
10.
he's at another level. I wouldn't be surprised if they cheated a little bit and like, "Hey, we're gonna show you your family. We're gonna show you videos of your kids
Right,
and just let you get in it, man. Just do whatever
right,
you wanna do." But I would love to be a fly on the wall and know if if
right.
if he
And
was
he
actually working with
right, and
Jessica.
he's
Like, if he was
touching
working with Jessica,
he's
that'd be
touching
great.
the screen, "Murph, no, no."
Yeah.
Like, oh, so emotional. All right, so this next scene is Cooper and Amelia Brand. They're talking about what planet to go to, and it's the exchange about love. So
Yes.
I'm gonna play Brand, and Ricardo's gonna continue playing Cooper.
All right. She's in love with Wolf Edmonds.
Yes, and that makes me want to follow my heart. But maybe we've spent too long trying to figure all of this out with theory.
You're a scientist, Brand.
So listen to me. When I say that love isn't something we invented, it's observable, powerful. It has to mean something.
Love has meaning, yes. Social utility, social bonding, child rearing.
We love people who have died. Where's the social utility in that? None. Maybe it means something more, something we can't yet understand. Maybe it's some evidence, some artifact of a higher dimension that we can't consciously perceive. I'm drawn across the universe to someone I haven't seen in a decade, who I know is probably dead. Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space. Maybe we should trust that, even if we can't understand it yet. All right, Cooper. Yes. The tiniest possibility of seeing Wolf again excites me. That doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Honestly, Amelia, it might.
So, the lead up to here, there's been already been a lot of emotions because
Yeah.
he lays into her for her mistake on the water
Mm-hmm.
planet because it cost
Yes.
them time. And she pulls back at him and are you mad at me because we messed up? Or are mad at me because now I took time away from you to going back to see your family?
Yeah.
You know, are you thinking about your family or are you thinking about the mission? I'm thinking about the
Exactly.
mission. And he
Yeah.
didn't like that at all. So in this moment, he's kind of coming back at her again. And, in the scene after this, they're having an exchange again. And, she says, hey, if we don't make it, just to let you know, here's all the embryos. I hope you can, not think about love and think about reasoning like you just told me,
Yeah.
so
This is again, this was a really, really good scene for me because she's talking about love being quantifiable as something more than just a social status and structure. Because he's like,
yeah,
oh, like, yeah, we love for childbearing, we do this, we love for that. And she's like, we love people that don't exist anymore. We love
right.
people that have passed away. We love people across space and time. And like when she's saying that, I'm like, that's a very valid point. Like we do as a human species, like we love to points beyond belief. Like
And
we love
right.
people who have been
Let's
long gone forever and
Right,
ever. Like,
let's put it out there. I mean, it's a form of love. We love these artists that we've never met,
yeah,
these actors and
they're
musicians that we've never met. People
yeah,
weep, they mourn when these people pass away,
yep,
So there's something to be said there.
yeah.
So,
There's a strong emotional connection that maybe it's more than just a quote unquote word or social structure, but something deeper. And I love this conversation. I was like, all right, I like that. That's what I like.
yeah, it's great. Anne Hathaway selling it as usual, just
Yup,
solid. This last exchange is in the fifth dimension
I love
between
Tars.
Tars and Cooper, and just McConaughey just bringing it again, and it's him figuring out that he needs to find a way to contact Murph through the fifth dimension on the other side of the bookshelf. So I'm going to be Tars, and Ricardo once again is going to be Cooper here. Cooper, they didn't bring us here to change the past.
Say that again.
They didn't bring us here to change the past.
Nah, they didn't bring us here at all. We brought ourselves. Tars, give me the coordinates for NASA and binary.
In binary, Roger, feeding data.
Don't you get it yet, Tars? I brought myself here. We're here to communicate with three-dimensional world. We're the bridge. I thought they chose me, but they didn't choose me. They chose her.
For what, Cooper?
Save the world. All of this, all of this is one little girl's bedroom every moment. It's infinitely complex. They have access to infinite time and space, but they're not bound by anything. They can't find a specific place and time. They can't communicate. That's why I'm here. I'm going to find a way to tell Murph, just like I found this moment.
How, Cooper?
Love, Tars. Love. It's like Brand said, my connection with Murph, it's quantifiable. It's the key.
What are we here to do?
Find out to tell her. The watch. The watch, that's it. We code the data into movement of the second hand. Tars, translate the data into Morse and feed it to me.
Translating data to Morse? Cooper, what if she never came back for it?
She will. She will.
How do you know?
Because I gave it to her. I love Tars. I absolutely adore Tars. Tars is a machine. I love Tars. I love the back and forth. But I love this realization. Like, this was the moment in the theater where my brain was melting. You know what I mean? Like, this is where it was like, oh my God, like, this is why I'm here. They didn't choose me. They chose her. It's like, for what? It's like to save everyone. Like, why? Is it because love is quantifiable? Like, my love, my connection to Murph is going to do this. And again, it goes back to what Brian was saying earlier, that love transcends time, dimension. And like, they brought him all the way here in order for him to be able to use gravity to tell her. Like, I'm just like, man, like, and him coming to that realization is just hitting on all fronts. Because again, it's like, oh no, it's not me. It's not about me. It's not. Like, it's our connection, so it's her. And I'm just like, little girl's gonna save the world. I'm so happy.
Yeah, it's a really nice. They tie everything up at the very end here. Like we bring it back to just the bookshelf, the ghost, everything. You know, I brought myself here. You know, so
Yeah,
such a mind blowing thing here.
duh, like I said, Terminator 2 style, man. It's that
Right.
loop.
Yeah. So we're gonna start wrapping things up here. This is an emotional movie. It's
Very.
it's not it's not short. It's 2 hours and
Mm-mm.
45 minutes. Um, Oppenheimer hasn't come out yet. That's listed at 3 hours, but
Yeah.
Interstellar is still the longest Nolan movie. And whenever I have to sit down and rewatch this, I prepare myself because it's such an
Mhm.
emotional experience. Well, first of all, I'm going to be sitting there for almost 3 hours, so that needs to be
Yeah.
blocked off. And then it's oh well, this is going to be a really emotional experience. So I need to ask you, is this your favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
It is. It is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and I know that in a world where The Prestige, Inception, The Dark Knight, all of those things, but I am a softie. So again, the idea, I remember I couldn't stop talking about it. Like, guys, he made love quantifiable. Like, that, you don't understand what that meant to me. It's like, he made love quantifiable. And it was just for that reason alone, and that connection. And I've always been a very family oriented person. And this idea that love could be quantifiable in such a dire situation, like, it hit on such a level. And then obviously having kids, like, it just cemented itself even more. Like, no. And again, that's what I love about movies, right? Is that how we all connect to them differently, and why someone's favorite movie might be their favorite because of personal experiences. And this is one of those moments for me. I think the movie on paper is already fantastic. Seeing it on the big screen is fantastic, but having that extra layer there, that deep connection that I can feel for it as a person, as a human being, as a father, and like, to me, that just, it's immense. So yeah, like, many people don't put it that high on his list, but for me, it's my personal favorite.
So The Dark Knight is still going to be my favorite Nolan movie because I
Mhm.
love that movie. But as far as originals go, it's still Inception. That's my favorite,
Dude, so good.
but that's okay though, because we talk about this a lot. You're picking one of a catalog of great movies.
Yes,
Like they're all great,
they're
So
all great. Like,
it, yeah, absolutely. So
it's
speaking of Inception, with that open ending of
Mhm.
Inception, with the totem spinning the top, we talked about that movie possibly having a sequel and it
Mhm.
possibly working. Do you think a sequel to Interstellar could work where Cooper's on a mission to go find Amelia, or are you okay with just leaving it the way it is?
For me, I am okay with leaving it the way it is, because I think what makes that story work so well is the connection with him and Murph. Like, that connection is what really drives this movie. And I think that the connection he has with Bran is very different. It's a very different connection. And the main, like, obviously there's a friendly bond that he has with Brand, but it's nothing like his relationship with his daughter. And while he is searching for her, in my canon, in my head canon, the most dominant reason why he's going is because that's what he does. Again, it's insinuated in the beginning. It's like, hey, like that's what you're meant to do. You're not meant to sit around and just be here. Like you're not meant to do that. So even when his daughter says, like, hey, like no father should watch their child die, that already in itself is another reason to not want to be there. But the main reason she goes, because you're meant to be out there. So I felt like leaving it open ended like that. That's the story. That's his ending essentially, where like he just needs to be out there. And again, for me, I'd like to be optimistic and say that he found her, but I don't. Me personally, I mean, if Nolan decided, I'm like, yeah, I'll trust you, man. In Nolan we trust.
Right.
But I think that I don't need a sequel for this. I don't need any more story. I don't need anything else because I think again the main draw of Interstellar is is the is love being quantifiable. That's my central thesis with this movie. And if we do a follow up, it's like okay, like the one thing that drew me to Interstellar the most and why it's my favorite movie that isn't in the sequel because now it's a search and rescue pretty much. Like he's like, I'm gonna go find her. She won't be alone. I'm gonna help her colonize, et cetera, and whatnot. And he's got Tars with him, which is great. So we would have a nice banter for dialogue in a sequel. But yeah, I'm perfectly fine where it's at.
I think Nolan does a great job of leaving things open, but
Mhm.
not to the point of a cliffhanger where
Yeah.
I'm not satisfied. Some people feel that way because of the way he leaves his endings. You know,
Mhm.
then the ending of Dark Knight Rises, you see Blake rising up, and
Yeah.
now people want to see Blake's story.
Mhm.
Yeah, at the end of Inception with the top spinning, people wanted to see the top fall, and well, what happens now? And now we have Interstellar, where Brand is out there, but she hasn't been found yet, and I'm okay with this
Yeah.
because he's leaving it up to the audience to decide. I've seen movies, and I can't think of any that come to mind right now, where they give us a cliffhanger and then we never get a follow up.
Yeah, it's brutal when they do that, man. Because it's like,
Yeah,
oh, and it's like you're like, oh, you're kind of waiting for, but he does a really good job with his open ending. Because I think that he understands sometimes there's no better story than the ones we make up in our own minds,
right.
and I think that it's great to have an open ending like that. Because again, I can theorize, I can come up with my story that he finds her, they colonize that planet, they start a new life there, they start NASA, like all kinds of things, or he can retrieve her and be like, hey, we're actually going to go back and whatnot. You don't have to be here alone anymore. Like there's a bunch of things I can come up with, and that's fun in itself. So I don't need any more than that.
Right. All right, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown of Interstellar by Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
We are continuing our filmography here. Next up is Dunkirk.
Yes.
So we go from one loud movie to another loud movie.
Very loud.
So if you folks could give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, we'd appreciate it. As always, please take a look at us and give us that subscribe because that's going to help us out with our reach and so on and so forth. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.